What's up, my friends? It is Danny Gallows, of course, and welcome back to the next part of my Navy experience, which is going to be one of the very first countries that I can remember, and that is Dubai. Now, I say one of the very first countries that I can remember because, as you guys have to remember that this was back in 2006, so this was a long time ago. I don't remember exactly what order that I visited these countries in on the cruise, but I do remember that Dubai was one of the first, and it's one of the most vivid memories to me. It's one of the memories that sticks out to me the most because it was just so beautiful and was such a great experience, and it was such a different experience, very unique, a landscape over there, an environment, an atmosphere as well, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. But before we get into even arriving at Dubai, I have to say that my during this time in the Navy, going out to sea for a very long, extended period of time, one of the things that you come to get used to is the food. Everybody always asks, is the food as bad as they always say it is? Is Navy food disgusting? Is Army food disgusting? Military food, in general, disgusting? And, no, it's the same as like cafeteria food or stuff that you find in colleges or stuff like that. It's just regular cafeteria food. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing gourmet about it. Obviously, it's just regular food. And after a while, you get used to it. They have schedules and stuff down there. Breakfast is especially good. Breakfast, you can get anything you want. You can get hot breakfast, you can get cold breakfast, you can get anything from pancakes to sausages to waffles, eggs. You can actually even ask. They have some chefs up there that take orders for omelets. You can have omelets made up there. You can have a full breakfast, cereal and bagels and muffins and all that kind of stuff. The breakfast is great. And then they have, other regular stuff for lunch and dinner like pizza and hot dogs and hamburgers and chicken nuggets, mashed potatoes, regular stuff. And then they have salad bars and stuff like that. So actually, and this is all on board an aircraft carrier, obviously, So actually, the cafeterias and the mess halls are pretty set up for people. It's pretty decent. It's not like I said, it's not gourmet, obviously, but it's decent food. It's not horrendous food. It's not like they're taking purple slop and and throwing it on your plate there. It's just regular food. It's fun. And after a long time, you really come to enjoy it because it's the only thing that you have, and it's really the only thing that you have to look forward to, because while you're doing flight ops and stuff, especially getting closer and closer and closer to the Middle East, as we get closer to Dubai, it gets so hot on the flight deck. I worked on the flight deck as a chalker and a chainer at that specific time, and I was out on the flight deck, and I would have jets come in. Lots of jets. One jet, one F-18, basically every 5 minutes coming by, and I would have to throw a chalk in the wheel and chain it down, and I'd have to be dodging my way in and out of aircraft, avoiding tail bars coming down with the aircraft exhaust blowing in my face. You got to remember that this is like 110-degree heat with 100% humidity in the Middle East on the tar flight deck of an aircraft carrier with hot aircraft exhaust blowing in your face with bombs on the wings of the aircraft. It's a very, 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 very real environment. You really have to get used to it. They say there's this saying on the flight deck that goes, keep your head on a swivel. And what it means is that you always have to be aware of your surroundings, because at any moment, you could get blown off the flight deck at any moment. A plane could a jet could be taxiing by you and just power up a little bit too much, and then whoop, there you go, right off the flight deck into the water. And sometimes planes, the jets did do that. They would go by and then power up just a little bit too much, and you would literally, I would have to squat down on the flight deck and hold on to a pad-eye, which were where we would put the chains for the tie-downs, and hold yourself down on the flight deck as a jet was passing, because it was just so intense. Meals. Food was something that we really looked forward to after working these hard days on the flight deck. Very, very hard days, back-breaking days on the flight deck. Chalking and chaining, hauling tow bars, helicopters, F-18s, CODs, all this stuff. Long days. we look forward to going down, and so it's like, some people would turn their nose up at this food, not after you've been at sea for 2 months, a month and a half, 2 months, and that's the only thing that you have to look forward to. You really, really enjoy the food, and sometimes I miss it, especially the breakfast. Getting cooked a full breakfast like that was just, looking back on it now, was nice. But anyway, and then we got into Dubai. Of course, we got further and further and further into the Middle East, and one day we woke up and we were in Dubai. And I should say that, before we even woke up, it was the most beautiful experience being off the coast, because of course, as you guys have heard in my previous videos, the ship usually stays off the coast for up to a day or maybe even 2 days before we pull in. And it was just the most beautiful experience being off the coast. Now, when you're off the coast of Dubai in the Middle East, sometimes the ocean is just dead calm, almost like glass. And so the ship would kind of just be, sitting there going at a very slow speed across this very calm ocean. And then off in the distance in the horizon, this is at nighttime, of course, after sunset, after everything is, getting dark. And then in the horizon, you could see the oil fields. And you could see, because there would be these little flames dotted on the horizon, just these big, flames. Of course, they were big in real life, but we were far away, so they just looked like little dots. But you could just make it out. They looked like candles on the horizon in this big black open space with this calm water. And then sometimes, if the ship was in the right spot, we would be going a little, let's say we'd be going a little faster, maybe a little bit further off coast or something like that, we would get to see a bioluminescent jellyfish in the water. And they would glow blue. It was like being on the set of like an alien movie or something. You would literally, we would be standing on the edge of the ship and just looking over the ocean, of course, and you would see these jellyfish, you would see these, they were just blue lights. It looked like someone was turning on a blue flashlight under the water. You'd see a flash over here, and a flash over here, and then a flash over here, and then a flash, over here, all over, dotted all over the ocean. It was like this really magical experience, before even pulling in to Dubai. Just a very, very intense area, a really, really vivid area, visceral area to be in, and of course ingrained in my memory. But then, of course, we got into port, and what I remember from Dubai, the port in Dubai, is that they had a little area for us set up called the sandbox, meaning where right where you got off the ship there was this square. It was almost like a town square, like a mini town square that was man-made, because Dubai is the host of so many Navy ships that they just decided to set up like a little like a shanty town basically right outside the ship, and they call it the sand pit. So if you're standing on the aircraft carrier and looking out, you see the sand pit, as they call it, right below the ship, and then desert over here and desert over there. And nothing, you see like buildings, kind of like sparse buildings here and there, but nothing but desert. And then if we look behind us towards the back of the ship, you could see all these beautiful yachts parked in the berthings, a little bit further down, maybe like a half-mile down or a quarter-mile down or so. All these beautiful yachts, these very expensive, lavish boats and stuff like that, parked a little bit down there. But yeah, we finally got off the ship after all this time, and where we head into the sandbox. And the sandbox was a great experience. Like I said, it was like a shanty town. Imagine like a cube, but there was just like trailers set up, right? And in each of these trailers, you could like buy stuff. They had authentic Middle Eastern carpets and dresses, cloths, materials. One guy was selling cigarettes and cigarellos and little like hashish stuff for hookahs, hookah pipes, hookah pieces. One guy was selling ice cream. One guy was selling fried food. And there were actual food stands there from real locations. Like there was an actual like Burger King there, but it was like a trailer. It was like in a trailer, and there was like, I think there was like a Sbarro like pizza shop or something like that. But again, it was in a trailer. It was just like in these small like little trailers. They were just like a tent Burger King or something. It was really cool. It was awesome. Like I said, it was set up just for us. And then in the middle, they had these tables set up, just tables and chairs. And the best part about it was that they were passing out these coupons here, right, which were dollar beer coupons, because the Sandpit was really a beer garden. Aside from all of the shops that they had there already, there was also beer stands around all around, and they would hand out these coupons that were $1 beers. So we would just, we would go here and get a beer, and we'd go there, and you'd see guys, carrying around, 4 beers like this, like four things of beers like this, just carrying around, just going through them one after another. And it was such a great time because we were there. Sometimes they would have live bands playing. There was like a stage there, and there would be like a band playing or something, and we would just have a great time just drinking and listening to music and sharing stories. That was basically our first night, just eating. Like, if you can imagine, getting off the ship and having real food for the first time, like drinking beer and eating Burger King, and saying just stuffing our faces and having a good old time until we just it was too much and we just had to go back to the ship. And let me tell you guys, man, there's some funny stories from the Sandpit going back to the ship. Just great stories, I remember my buddy Boom, who I told you guys in the last video, my buddy Boom was sleeping in his rack after he came back from the Sandpit, and I remember just in the middle of the night, just randomly, he just rolls out of his rack, and he opens the door to his closet, which is right by his rack, and he just starts peeing in his closet. And one of my other buddies, Petty Officer Man, he comes by the rack, and he just does this double take, he sees Boom, and he just does this double take. He's like, Boom! And Boom's like, what, man? He's like, what you doing? He's like, you pissing, man? You pissing? Oh, man, leave me alone. And then there was another guy, either the same night or another night, who was, who just woke up during the middle of the night and puked all over the place. It was just the reaction on his face. It was just so priceless. He was laying in his rack, and all of a sudden he just kind of shut up like this, and then wide-eyed, of course. And then people kind of looked over at him, and they said, they're like, hey man, like, you all right? You all right? And he just kind of nodded his head for a second. Nodded his head. You all right, man? You all right? Wide-eyed, nodded his head, and then all onto the floor. And these are the kind of stories that go on, just this crazy stuff. Of course, after being at sea so long and getting out, it's just you cut loose, and things like that just happen. There's all kinds of funny experiences. Even me, that was being in the Sandpit was probably one of the times in my life I was the most intoxicated ever. I was just ridiculous, just yelling and proclaiming and just being stupid. Looking back on it now, oh my goodness, I can't even believe this, just the things that I was saying and that I was doing and how I was acting and stuff like that. And lesson learned, definitely. But that was our first night, that was our first experience. But the second day was really, oh, I'm sorry, that was our first experience in the Sandpit. The first day that we were out there, though, me and my buddy Phil, we ended up going to the mall. We ended up taking a little van. They had these vans that went from the Sandpit basically into the city. And the first day, we had a little time to ourselves, so we said, yeah, let's go in and we'll see the mall. And driving through Dubai is just absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's like, imagine just a desert, like a big flat desert, but there's cities like scattered throughout the desert. As we're going down these highways, which are just roads, just in the middle of the desert, there's just cities, like these little apartment complexes and just, just complexes, just spread all throughout the desert. Just, an amazing landscape, an absolutely amazing landscape. And then we finally got to the mall, and the mall is just incredible. If you guys don't know the main mall, like in Dubai, the mall that Dubai is known for, it has a ski mountain in it, a literal ski mountain. We went in it, and not only is the architecture incredible, you walk in, and there is this, I remember this massive atrium as soon as you walk in, this glass atrium with this steel, and there's all this architecture all around the mall. Here in America, our malls are boring. Our malls are just square and rectangular and sleek and modern and, boring. Stuff like in Dubai, they have architecture everywhere. Like in any open groove, in any open corner, in any open space, there's like an archway with some artwork in it, or some like wrought iron steel, or another atrium, or more glasswork or something like that. There's something to see everywhere. And then scattered throughout the mall, which is about 3 or 4 levels, I think, are just these stores, just like any other mall. They're clothing stores, electronics stores, food stores, and stuff like that. Me and Phil, of course, we got a chance to go on the ski mountain, which was awesome. We actually snowboarded inside a mall. I mean, you went into this park and there was a ski lift, like a literal mountain, a small mountain that was about 4 stories tall, 4 or 5 stories tall, and you can see it on the outside of the mall. If you take a look at the outside of the mall, you'll see this giant steel structure just coming away from the mall in like a giant L, and that's the mountain. And so we actually, we had they gave us like jackets and stuff like that to wear, and we could rent snowboards or skis, and then you get on a ski lift, go up to the top of the big hill that we obviously they're making artificial snow and stuff like that, and you go down and you go back up and you go down and you go back up and you go, and we had a blast. And then after that was when I bought my laptop. We put our snowboards and our equipment and everything away, and it was almost time to go back, so I said, I want to go to an electronics shop and I want to get my computer. And what I did is I ended up going to an Apple store over there in Dubai for the first time in my life, which ended up being a mistake much later on in my life, and I'll regale you guys with that story later. It ended up being a huge mistake, but it was kind of like a blessing in disguise at the same time, because I bought this computer stupidly for, this thing was like, I don't even know, this thing was like $2,100. It was when the Apple laptops were really popular, those OS laptops, I think they were called, with that. They were really popular, so they were super, super expensive. But I bought it, seriously, simply because it had music software on it. I was like, oh, GarageBand, I got to buy this thing. And I was loaded at the time with money because, not only was I making regular Navy pay, but I was making overseas pay, and I was making war, hazard pay and all that stuff. So I was loaded, so I was like, oh, $2,100, whatever, I'll just get it. And I ended up getting it, and when I went back to the ship that night, after we had got back home and everything, I started fooling around with GarageBand for the very first time. And many of you guys know that I'm an accomplished musician in many different genres of music, but also in electronic and like beats and sampling, dance music and stuff like that, but electronic music in general. That moment, when I had that laptop, when I bought that laptop and I started messing around with GarageBand, that was my birth. That was the birth of my electronic world. I started making electronic music on GarageBand. Like my roots are in GarageBand with electronic music. And GarageBand literally taught me that my very first electronic songs ever were in a GarageBand. So when you guys hear me making electronic music today, like that moment, when I was over in Dubai and I bought that laptop, which had Arabic writing, and I'm sorry if that's wrong. I believe it's Arabic writing. It had Middle Eastern writing on it, like foreign writing on it and everything. I actually learned, that was the moment when I learned how to actually write electronic music for myself. So nice little personal history there. Nice little tidbit, I guess you could say. But the second day is when things really happened, because that was our adventure day. See, they had like this on the ship. There was like this what do they call it? Like a activities coordinator, right? Like someone who coordinates activities for all of the sailors when we're in port, right? So one of the things that we could do is we had this option to take the van, a van ride out to the middle of the desert, and then have this great SUV these guys had Land Rovers, off-road Land Rovers, and we had the option to go out to the desert, have a Land Rover ride around the desert, go out, pet some camels, and then have this like feast or something like that in the middle of the desert with belly dancing. And so me and Phil saw this, my buddy Phil saw this, and we were like, yeah, like we got to do this, man. The next day, like we don't have duty the next day or anything. The next day, we have got to do this. Like this is what we've got to do. So I remember the next day, me, Phil, and then this girl that Phil really liked that was working in the mess hall. She was a chef actually at the time. Came with us, and we went out on this great adventure to the middle of the desert, which actually started off pretty hilarious. On our way out there, there was some guy in our van on the way out there who had been drinking heavily already. He had been, because you guys got to remember, the sand pit is right outside the ship, and it's open. The beer garden is open all the time. So when any time you're ready to go out onto the road, get into the van and go out on your adventure, you can just chug 3 or 4 beers before you go out on your adventure. So that's what this guy did. And so halfway down the highway, this guy starts complaining to the driver about how he's really gonna pee. And the driver's like, look, we can't stop. We can't, stop. I can't stop. And middle of the highway, I'm required to take you guys to the middle of the desert. I can't stop anywhere. But as we kept going, this guy's complaining kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, until the point where he was like, look, driver, like, I need you to stop the car. Like, I'm going to pee, like, all over your back seat. Like, I can't handle it. And you're like, I'm sorry, like, you need to pull over. And so there we are in Dubai, right? In Dubai. The driver pulls over to the side of the road. We're all in the van, like trying to avert our gaze, and this guy is standing literally in the back of the van, peeing into the desert on the side of the highway, just like peeing into the desert. The poor driver had to stop, and of course the guy made it as quick as he could, and he hopped back in the van, and then we were off to our location. And man, let me tell you guys, our location. Our location, it was majestic, it was magical. It was literally in the middle of the desert, like in the middle of the desert. I mean, we had to drive so far out just to get there, right? And so we get there, and the first thing that's there is a bunch of camels. Just a big camel pet. It was like a camel petting zoo. And so we had a chance to go around and pet the camels and interact and take pictures. And we weren't supposed to ride them or get on top of them or anything. But my buddy Phil, being the person that he was, a little bit mischievous as he was like, dude, like, get a picture of me, like, I'm going to get on top of this camel. And so this poor camel that was sitting there, just like, sleeping on the ground or whatever, Phil, like, gets fully on top of it. Like, he got both legs over the camel. And of course, he didn't, harm the camel or anything. The camel was just chilling, on the ground. But it was just so funny because nobody was like, you weren't supposed to do that. And somehow Phil got both legs over, and he's like, here, take a picture, take a picture. And he got off and everything, and it was great. And the camel was like, yeah, get away from me and everything. And then came our amazing SUV ride. As I said before, these guys had these awesome Land Rovers. They were these off-road Land Rovers, and basically what they did is they took us out in like groups. Like there was like a group of like 5 or 6 Land Rovers, and they just took us out into the desert. And let me tell you guys, it was one of the most fun experiences of my life. My buddy Phil took video of it, but I don't think he ever got it. Like, he ever got it processed, or maybe he lost it or something like that, but I've never seen it. It was like being on a roller coaster. Like imagine being on an enclosed roller coaster ride in the desert. Whenever I think about it, actually, I'm always reminded of that movie, The Perfect Storm. When they're like the finale of the movie, when they're trying to get out of the storm and they're going through the waves, and the boat is going up of the waves and it's down the waves and up the waves and down the waves like that. That's how it was. Imagine going like 40 miles an hour up a sandhill, and then shoom, a steep drop, shoom, and there's like 5 other people in the SUV with you, and we're all holding on to the handles and onto each other and onto the seats, and we're going up the mountain at like 50 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden a steep drop, and we're all whoa, like that. We get to the bottom of the hill, and It was so intense that our driver, the guy who was driving us around, his SUV actually blew a tire. He was driving so intense that he came down so hard on one of his tires that it like the tire blew off, like it was mangled. And they actually had to have another SUV come to pick us up to finish the ride off with some other people because he had to take his SUV back. The only SUV in the group, thank you very much, right here, that got their tire wrecked. I was a part of that mission. That was awesome. And so that was just such an intense experience, one of the best experiences of my life. And then after that, just to cap off an already amazing day, we came back to the actual sand pit, like this congregation basically of tents and of rugs in the middle, again, right in the middle of the desert. And of course, we got out of the SUVs, we came to our location, we stepped out, and at that time, the sun had set. We saw a beautiful sunset in the desert. It was dark outside. You know, we took some pictures of the sun in our hand. You know how you can take the picture where the sun is in your hand? We did that for the sunset. And then it was dark outside, and we came into the sand pit, the actual sand pit area. And off to our right, there were ATVs, four-wheelers, going around in a little small sand area. And my buddy feels like, oh yeah, we gotta do that, we gotta do that. So of course we go over there. We got he got on an ATV and just took the ATV around in the dark. It was almost pitch black, mind you. Took the ATV around in this little pit in the dark. You know, had a little race. You know what I'm saying, around the dark. And then we got down into this area where there were a bunch of tents set up. And then in these cloth tents, there were areas where you could buy jewelry and buy clothes. You could buy souvenirs. You could go in and you could dress up in the traditional Middle Eastern clothes. And you could get food and drinks. And they had these great tables inside where we had to sit on the floor on cushions, and these amazing carpets and these low tables. We were sitting on the cushions, and they served, you know, the traditional bread and all the mixes and all the traditional food and stuff like that. We had traditional food. We listened to traditional music. There was a belly dancer outside. There's a fire pit outside. After we finished eating inside in the tents, we would go outside and we'd get like our alcoholic beverage, of course. And then we would sit around. There was basically carpet, just a bunch of carpets laid out on the sand, and in the middle a fire pit. And then there was a belly dancer and all these like different musicians playing these different instruments around. And we just went out and we watched, and it was just magical. You know, all of this in the pitch black of the desert under a moon, a beautiful desert moon, a blue, huge desert moon. You know, it was just the most magical experience, one of the most magical experiences of my life, and I just treasure everything about that. Just being there with my friends and just experiencing that. You know, drinking and watching the fire and the belly dancer and having that great Land Rover experience in the desert and the camels. You know, and just all the funny stories. You know, coming back to our racks after drinking in the sand pit and pissing in the lockers and stuff. I mean, it's just all these amazing, crazy stories. You know, in this wonderful place they call Dubai, this wonderful, beautiful place they call Dubai. I've actually been to Dubai twice in my life, and the second time was on another cruise, you know, that came later on, like a little 3-month cruise or something like that. But the only thing that really happened on that experience was that, you know, it was me and Phil once again. We just went back to the mall to hang out, and we also went to the Hard Rock Cafe, and of course had some drinks and some good food and just hung out. We weren't there for as long when we went there for the second time. But yeah, a bunch of amazing, crazy experiences. And you know what? That's just the start of everything. That's just one country. That's just Dubai. I've still got 7 more countries to go to tell you guys about. Actually, well, I've already done Hawaii already, so I've got 6 more countries to go right now to tell you guys about my experiences. And there's so much more to tell. So many stories to regale you guys with still to go. So please tune in next time. This is going to wrap it up for my Navy experience in Dubai. But tune in next time where I'm going to be talking about another outstanding location, absolutely beautiful, majestic location, Hong Kong. So please tune in next time, tomorrow, when I'll be taking you guys through my experiences at Hong Kong. Until then, take care. Later.